Hey everyone, welcome to workshop number 2 and welcome back if you were here last week. We are here, I'm Nadia, I should say. I work at Substack. I do our editorial and community, and we are here to listen and learn from Lenny Rachitsky, who's here to talk to us about going paid.
Hi guys.
Before we get started, I just wanted to quickly invite up Paul Armstrong as well, who, if you were here in the last workshop, started a WhatsApp group for Substack writers to meet each other and talk to each other. The WhatsApp group turned into a Slack group, I think, as far as I know. And it's just had this like fun flurry of activities. So if you're looking to meet other Substack writers, I'm just gonna have Paul talk for a moment about that. Paul, do you wanna hop on stage?
Okay. Does that work? Brilliant. Hi everyone. Yeah, it was a really random thing. We just set it up. It went from WhatsApp to Slack. But if you want to learn about new skills in for distribution, hints and tips, and just get feedback on your Substack and that sort of stuff, I'll put the URL on the bottom. And there's also another good reason for joining as well. I'm actually president of BuzzBar, which is a digital marketing and production service. £65 now. I'm meant to be in Los Angeles hiring 150 people over there, but working in London at the moment. But yeah, if you really want to make your Substack a bit better, and that's the thing, get some sort of help, we'll put it in the chat and then just join it. And I'll let you guys get on because you're amazing. Thank you ever so much. Nadia's in there. You've got people from the New York Times, BuzzFeed, and there's lots of like amazing writers from sci-fi to personal journeys and that sort of stuff. So loads of people.
Cool. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, it's great to have an extra group for people to meet and talk to each other even beyond these workshops. Sweet. Okay, a little bit of housekeeping also if you're new to this crowdcast format. There's a chat box on the right. Please use it liberally. Also, please be nice to each other. There's also this ask a question button in the middle. So if you have a question for Lenny, we're going to do a 15-minute Q&A at the end. So if you have a question for Lenny, not for Substack, but for Lenny, feel free to ask that in the ask a question button, and then we'll use that to feed into the Q&A. And even if you don't have a question, you should check it out because you can upvote questions and just sort of indicate your interest in hearing something answered or covered. I think that's it. So I'm going to, with that, introduce Lenny, who writes Lenny's newsletter. We asked him to come and talk to us about paid launches because he's had a free newsletter on Substack for a little while and then recently launched paid subscriptions. He also did a great Twitter thread on this topic that went viral. So I can share that in the chat afterwards. With that, I'm going to turn things over to Lenny.
Thanks, Nadia. That Twitter thread came from working on this presentation. So this is going to be 10 times more content. So let me set up my shared screen. I'll stand by. Let's see how this all works. Okay. Nadia, if you can let me know if this is working, that would be super helpful.
Yes, we can see everything.
Okay, cool. Okay, so thank you everyone for coming to this very socially distanced presentation. I'm going to be basically sharing everything I've learned from launching a paid newsletter, and there's going to be basically 3 parts to this over the next 30 minutes. How I grew my early subscribers and how I got basically started, how I launched paid, and everything I learned along the way, and then just a few things that I think you should consider before going paid. And a little bit of background on the newsletter. Nadia shared a little bit. It's very creatively called Lenny's Newsletter. I didn't have a name for it, and I just went with that when I signed up for Substack, and it's stuck now, so I can't change it, but it works. And the newsletter is essentially a weekly newsletter that's a advice column for product and growth people and people dealing with, just like working and dealing with stress at the office. I launched about a year ago. I launched paid about 2 months ago. I'm at about 15,000 free subscribers, 500 paid, and it's making about 65K a year before fees, which I'll talk about. So here's like the trajectory of the newsletter from beginning to end. And I imagine if you're on Substack, you check this dashboard often. And so I'm going to be going through kind of the story of this and how it grew and what I learned. And one thing I'll say just off the bat is I don't actually know what I'm doing. I'm just figuring this out as I go, just like I think everybody else here. So this may work for you and this may not work for you. You may have a totally different newsletter. So hopefully you can get some learnings out of this. The other thing I'll say is this is kind of a strange time to be talking about like newsletters. There's much more important things in the world. And so a small thing that I'm going to do is just donate $1 for everyone that is watching this presentation, which to I think the NAACP. And so I think that's about 500 people right now. So just a small thing that I'm going to do. And so with that, let's get into part one. And so what I'm going to talk about is just how I grew the newsletter and kind of got it started. So zooming out a little bit, so I spent 7 years at Airbnb as a product manager. I joined in 2012, and then I left about a year ago. And I was just like trying to figure out, what did I learn from my time at Airbnb, and what can I take to my next project and startup or whatever I end up doing. And so I started writing it on like an Evernote, and then ended up turning it into a Medium post, which ended up doing extremely well, much better than I expected. It got like a bazillion claps. It got into like the top few hundred of Medium posts. Medium featured it. The CEO of Airbnb, Brian, shared it with the entire company because he was excited about it. And so it ended up driving a bunch of traffic to this thing, and made some money, which I didn't know was a thing on Medium, but that was a little surprise. And so this was kind of two things came out of this for me. One is maybe I have some stuff that I could share that people find useful, and you can make money writing. So that kind of like scratched or kind of got the bug in me to do this a little bit more. And so I kept writing. I ended up writing 5 other posts on Medium about product and product management and performance reviews and things like that. And then around this time, I was kind of advised that I should not be using Medium and I should be using Substack, because you have a direct relationship with your audience. You build up an email address list that is useful for whatever else you end up doing. And so in June, I moved to Substack, and I basically just copy and pasted everything for Medium and just started there. And in parallel, I was tweeting things like the same things I was writing about, with just like little nuggets of insights that I've kind of picked up about performance reviews and career ladders and things like that. And I started to build a Twitter audience in parallel, and you'll see that ended up being really important for the growth of the newsletter. And so one kind of learning that you'll see throughout this is, if you create value for people, they're going to follow you and want to see what you're doing and pay attention. And so you could do that with the newsletter, you could do that with Twitter, you could do it other places. And so it all comes down to just creating value for people. So I started the Substack. Then I was just like, okay, maybe I should just tell people I have this thing. I don't actually have a newsletter yet. It's just a place I'm writing. And so I just shared on Twitter, hey, I have a Substack, check it out if you want. I don't have any plans for it, but it's there. And that got a little love on Twitter from people that have a nice following. And so that led to my first 500 subscribers, basically that tweet. And then I did a guest post on another newsletter that has essentially my target audience subscribe to this newsletter. And so that led to another 500 subscribers. And so a learning there. And by the way, I have these little learnings on the side that you could, if you get bored of me talking, you just read these little learnings. So that got me to about 1,000 subscribers. Then I decided, okay, let me just try this. So let me just try an actual newsletter that's weekly, and to see how it goes. And so my idea was, what if I just do an advice column, kind of what it is today, for product managers and growth people and people managers, inspired by this lady, Julie Zhu, who's been doing the same kind of thing for designers. And so I tweeted that, I'm going to try this thing, see how it goes. And again, people on Twitter got excited about it and shared it, including Julie. And that got me another 500 subscribers. So again, from Twitter mostly. And so at that point, I just started writing every week for 3 months at this point. I answered 3 questions a week and kept building, and did another guest post that made me look really, really cool in another blog/newsletter that is a lot of my target audience. And so that got me to about 3,000 subscribers. And so a little learning here is guest posts are really effective because it allows you to get in front of your potential audience in a really easy way. And then in parallel, maybe just go back one. You see this big jump that's about to happen. So in parallel, I was working on this really deep post that took hundreds of hours of work and months of time to put this together. It ended up being an 8-part newsletter post about how to build a marketplace business. And so I put that out on the newsletter, and that was like the first big effort I put into the newsletter. And that led to about 2,000 subscribers, basically directly from that post. And the lesson there is hard work pays off. What do you know? And so I was about 5,000 at that point. And zooming into the future for a moment, if you look at my entire growth trajectory, 50% of my growth came from just 2 posts, which is crazy. So on the one hand, big epic posts are really powerful. On the other hand, the other 50% came from the everyday kind of every week regular posts. And so I don't think the answer is just do these big epic posts because they take a lot of time. I think the answer is mix them up. Try to do kind of straightforward regular posts. And then in the background, I would suggest working on something really epic that takes a while to put together. So going back, so I launched that marketplace post and just kept writing every week again for another 3 months, and got to about 9,000 subscribers just through that. And you may be wondering, where are these people coming from? How do you get to 9,000 subscribers just writing posts? And so here's basically the analytics of where folks are coming from. And the story is it's basically word of mouth, people telling their friends about it, posting to Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook, and sharing it with their colleagues and things like that. And then there's a little bit of SEO that starts to happen here. And so again, just like touching on that lesson of if you create value for people, they're going to want to follow you and they're going to want to share it with their friends. So I would always come back to that. And that is kind of my my secret to newsletter success that I suggest you maybe use, which is just deliver consistent value to your audience, and they're going to want to subscribe and pay and tell their friends about it. And the way I think about value, this is maybe not complete, but if you think about all the types of newsletters, it feels like you're either trying to entertain your audience or you're trying to make them smarter. And so just make sure you're doing one of those really well. And so when I write my newsletter, I have these 3 rules that I think about. I want to make sure every post is very actionable and concrete. And by the way, I'm very much in the make people smarter category, not the entertain them. So with that, I'm trying to make it very actionable and concrete because there's a lot of fluffy, fuzzy stuff out there, and there's a lot of free content, so you want to differentiate. 2 is I want to only talk about things I know, and if I don't know it, I loop in an expert. And then I think it's really important to add something new to the conversation, again, because there's so much content out there. People are not going to pay attention if it's just like the same old thing. And so what I find is this is exactly what's reflected back at me from comments that readers share. And so that tells me I'm on the right track. So here's a quick recap of part 1 of basically how I grew my free subscriber base. So 1, just deliver value to people and they're going to share it. Go to where your audience is and get in front of them. So guest posts are really good for that. Podcasts are probably good for that. Ads are a classic way of doing that. I leveraged people on Twitter that have a big audience and got them excited about what I'm doing, and they were interested, and so they shared it. So that was really important for me. Mixing regular posts and epic posts, we talked about that, but just like the value of having these big efforts once in a while. And then just like this stuff doesn't happen overnight. I've been at it for a year now, and it builds. There's rarely like a big moment of like, okay, I did it, I'm done. It's always a slow increase. Then you look back and like, wow, that grew. So that's the quick recap. And then before we get into how to launch paid, just the reasons I went paid when I had 0 intention to go paid from the beginning. 1 is I finally had confidence that I could do this. I did 10 months of free, and I was able to feel like, oh, wow, I could actually keep this up. I was getting a lot of positive feedback. I was enjoying it. Income is good. And I didn't have a job at this point. I took some time off. And so that was a nice opportunity. And I was trying to avoid getting a real job if I could. And so that's why I decided to embark on this experiment. So part 2, launching the paid newsletter. There we go. So there's basically 5 steps that I followed to launch the paid newsletter. The first we just talked about, building an audience initially. I think there's plenty of newsletters that launch straight to paid, and I think that works for a lot of people. But I think it's a lot easier if you come into it with an audience that's already bought into what you're doing, has already found value, and you're not just like starting from scratch. And you'll see partly why, because a lot of your stuff is hidden now and you can't share it because it's behind a paywall. So build an audience, decide on your price, craft your pitch, seed it with people, and launch. So let's talk about each of those. So the price, it's a pretty complicated question, and I spent a lot of time thinking about it and talking to a lot of people. And this is essentially the kind of the advice I got and what I found important. So 1 is think about how much discretionary income does your audience have, and just like, are they, like, my audience is tech employees, and so they have like a higher higher earning power, and so they're going to pay more. So I kind of upped my price. So that's an important element. Two is just like, how valuable is it to people? Is it like a painkiller? Is it going to solve a real problem for them, or is it just like a nice to have? And then just how unique is this? Can they get this for free somewhere else, or another newsletter? And then I found it important to validate it with a few readers to see if I could find 3 people that would pay for it at this price with the pitch that I was crafting. So I'd recommend trying to do that. And then I'd suggest trying to feel a little uncomfortable with the price. I think everybody starts at like, I'm just gonna do $5. Why would anyone pay more than that? I'm gonna get all these subscribers for $5. It's gonna be great. And the advice I got partly from the Substack folks is just like, you wanna feel a little uncomfortable with the price, because the economics of it actually work out so much better if you're charging you in like a few dollars more than you would naturally. And so for this talk, I actually did a little digging. And so I looked at the top 20 paid newsletters on Substack. And so these are their prices. And so one interesting thing is it's basically $5 to $50. But if you look at these 3 categories of kind of how I like to think about it, there's basically 3 categories of newsletters, I think. There's news, there's insights, which are just, here's ways to think about the world that kind of make you smarter and understand things in an interesting way. So there's news, insights, and there's entertainment. And it looks like entertainment and news, sadly, are kind of at the low end of the spectrum, which are like $5 to $10. And then insights are anywhere from like $5 to $50, and more like $10 to $50. And so that should help you figure out what price to set. I set mine at $15. I don't know if that was the right decision. Feels fine. I don't know. I don't know what would have been different at $10 or $20. So that's the price. Okay, so now you have your price. Now you got to figure out your pitch and convince people to subscribe. And I found that it was important to have 6 parts to it, to the pitch. And I'll show you my actual pitch and how this all kind of connects. So I found that it was important to just like, who the hell are you? I don't know what your email is, just like get out of my email box. So it's important to remind people who you are, what's actually changing, like what do you get if you pay and non-pay? So very tactical, concrete information. Then when it's changing, why someone should subscribe, why subscribe now? That ended up being really important. Just like, you know, people get this email and they're going to be like, okay, well, I'll check it out later. And if there's not a reason for them to act now, they're not going to necessarily do it. And then the question of just how to subscribe, very practically, like make it easy. And so here's my launch email. And I basically color coded by all these categories, how it all fits together. And so a couple things I'll point out is I found it useful to summarize at the top, like just TLDR, here's the most important thing that's changing, what you need to know and why it's great, and then go in more detail later. And then the FOMO piece, like the why now, I gave people a 33% discount if they subscribed in the first 48 hours, which I don't know if that worked or not, but it felt valuable. But it does impact your economics. You know, you end up making a lot less than you think you would because that initial flood is 33% lower than you expect. But it got subscribers in, and I think it's a good idea. So that's the launch email. So the next piece is you want to think of your going paid as a launch, because it's like, you know, it's a big event and it's a big deal, and you'll see why it's a big deal later. And so for me, I thought about who are the people that my potential readers pay attention to, and essentially it turned into, I looked for basically champions of the newsletter that have been like really excited about it and supportive of it, that have a big following. And so what I did is I just kind of let them know ahead of time, here's what I'm working on, got their feedback, which ended up being really useful just for feedback's sake. And then I gave them a heads up before I launched and then after I launched. And that worked really well. And so here's like actual emails I send to some of these folks on Twitter. And they're very simple, just like, hey, I'm launching this thing. You know, if you're inclined, maybe share it. And then finally launch. A couple practical things you want to think about is there's like a switch you need to flip in Substack to turn on paid. So don't forget to do that before you send out the email. And there's actually some things you want to set up ahead of time before you do that. So like create a Stripe account and set your price and things like that. So don't wait till the last minute to check that stuff out. And so then you do that, you send your email, you announce it on all your social media, you know, don't be shy about like, hey, I'm trying this thing, maybe subscribe. And then pick your influencers. And I put influencers in quotes because they're just like regular people with just a Twitter following. So It's kind of facetious. And then I would say keep expectations low. Don't count on this to be like exactly what you want it to be. This is just the beginning of a longer journey. You know, you're going to be at this for a while, so don't be sad if you're not hitting some goal that you had. So I launched, so this is actually, so something I recommend is putting together an actual launch plan that is basically day by day what you're going to do to make this successful and who you need to ping and what emails you need to send. And so this is actually my launch plan from Google Docs that I just put together, just like here's all the little steps that I have to take. And so I recommend you do something like this even when you're just starting to think about it. And so I sent my launch email, and this is the first reply I got in like 60 seconds, and not the most encouraging. And I don't know how other folks feel, but when I launched the paid plan, it was like very nerve-wracking because it was just like you're putting yourself out there and asking people for money for something you've never asked for money for, and it's like actually very nerve-wracking. And this wasn't exciting to get, but other than that, luckily people really connected and were excited and shared it, and it did really well. And so I got to about 200 subscribers the first couple of days, paid subscribers. And then I sent another reminder a week later with a little bit of like social proof and thank you to early supporters. And then I had a different discount that's lower discounts. Instead of 33%, it's 20%, just to create still a little bit of why should I act now? And I think that worked. And that got me to about 250 subscribers. And what's interesting is if you look at my paid subscribers today, about 50% came from just that first week of launch, or week and a half maybe. So it's just a reminder of how important the launch period is. So it's important to really think it through. And so another really interesting thing is I found I got a big bump in free subscribers from that same time. So I got like a few hundred just free subscribers coming in the day I launched paid. And I think it's because you convey value and it's like, oh, this is really good, I guess, if people are paying for it. And so people will sign up just to be a part of it, even if they're not paying. And then, so I launched it, did some reminders, sent a post every week for the next 3 weeks. And then I had my one free post, which actually did extremely well, unexpectedly, more so than I thought. And so that's a huge bump at the end. So that led to a bunch of free subscribers and then some level of paid, so 39 paid subscribers. And so a learning here is just once you're behind a paywall, assuming you still have a free post every once in a while, you want that free post to be extremely good because that's basically how you're going to grow after you go paid. And so zooming out again, this is all of my posts over the past year. I think it's about 50 posts. So just to kind of give that perspective. And then here's just where I'm at as of today. And a little recap of some tips about the paid launch. So make a plan. You want to get it right. You should feel slightly uncomfortable about your price. Again, make those free posts really, really good because that's a lot of how your growth is going to come now after you launch. And just like a couple more things here. Especially once you go paid, people are going to want specific content from you and they're going to push you in certain directions. And I find that it's really important to just like always stay close to what you actually enjoy writing about and not just like do things because you have to do it, because you don't want to just like be pushed into just another, like creating a job for yourself you don't enjoy. So that's just like a tip for you and something I found valuable. And then again, it's a grind. This is like not a one day and you're done kind of thing. This is an ongoing thing. So just keep at it. And then the last part 3, this is going to be very brief. So just a few things to consider before going paid. You know, it sounds like, oh, great, I'm going to go paid and make all this money and it's going to be amazing. But a few things that I learned afterwards, and even as I was thinking about it, that might be useful. So one is, you know, you launch paid and people start paying and they buy like yearly plans, and then they buy yearly plans through the year. So there's not like a point which they run out. And so you basically have to be ready to write for a long time, at least a year, and then maybe forever. I don't know. I don't even know how you stop. You maybe have to like stop accepting payment and then phase it out over the year. So that's something to think about. So just assume you're going to be doing this for a while. Make sure you have enough high quality ideas and content. And I found that writing for for 10 months gave me that confidence to 3 is just think about the take-home income you make. So, you might be like, okay, I'll do $5 a month. I'll get like 100 subscribers. That's 5,000. Yeah, or 500 subscribers. That's like $5,000 a month. That's amazing. But you have to think about the Substack fees, the Stripe fees, and then taxes. And so I think if you look at the number, like the 65K, I think I keep maybe 60% of that after all those things. So it's not as huge as it seems, but still money, and it's amazing, and I'm very thankful for it. And the other 2 things is think about how you're going to grow after you're behind the paywall, and just make sure you actually enjoy this. Again, like you don't want to create a job for yourself that you're not enjoying, because what's the point of that? So just think about like, am I enjoying this? Do I want to do this for like a year plus? So just always think about that. And to quickly summarize, again, just affirming my secret to newsletter success: deliver value consistently to your audience, and good things are going to happen. And I'm not going to go through this, but these are just kind of the summaries of each of the sections that you can check out on your own time. And that's that. And that's it. So you can find the deck right there at this little bit.ly link, and then check out my newsletter. Check me out on Twitter. And I think we're going to move to Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you. I don't actually know how to make myself as big as you again, but you're kind of small, and you're going to continue to be in the hot seat.
It's all good. Oh, there you are.
Transition back and forth. Thank you. That was really, really great. And hopefully you weren't reading the chat while you were trying to talk, because that would be super distracting.
Nope, I was not.
But a lot of people commented, which I felt as well, that just a lot of really great, concrete, actionable takeaways. So thank you.
Awesome.
Also, you got this like collective gasp that kind of went up when you had the slide about the guy whoever was responding and saying like boo, and you
I blocked
that face of it.
I won't name names.
Collective sympathy there. Yeah. Cool. So, and a lot of people asked about where the deck is, or where they can see slides there.
So it said, here, I'll post it in the chat, but it's bit.ly/launching paid newsletter.
Sweet.
Let me know if that doesn't work.
Yeah, a lot of folks are very happy to have the slides. So thank you again. And I have a bunch of questions here for you. First one is from Jennifer, asking, do you suggest starting with a paid newsletter or building up to asking for money after a certain amount of time? I have a large email following, but I don't post regularly and would be moving my contacts over from MailChimp.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I definitely recommend starting with a free base, whether it's like a big Twitter audience or a big Substack audience, or you just move them over from MailChimp. So I guess for you, it's like, I guess this person hasn't been emailing for a while. So I think I would definitely start just like a regular cadence of emails and show people that you're providing value, and then get to paid. So maybe do like a few months of just free if you haven't done it regularly. That's what I would do.
Building up the relationship again.
What was that?
But it's building up the relationship again.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think about this like a freemium model, like any like startup, give people a taste of what it's going to be. And then once they're like, oh, wow, this is really good. What am I missing? I need more of this. They'll pay.
Abhishek has 2 questions. The first one, which is, when's the right time to go paid? Does it depend on the number of subscribers or the amount of engagement, which you touched on a little bit, but maybe any extra thoughts you had about that?
Yeah, I thought a lot about this too. I was like, when should I go paid? And I like started like, man, I'm just going to wait a little longer. Wait for a little longer. Let me get to like 9,000. Maybe I'll wait for 10,000. That's a nice number. And then I just I think at some point you just have to go for it and not overthink it. But I guess in terms of engagement versus subscribers, that's a really good question. Ideally both. But I think if your engagement is not high, like, I don't know, if your open rate's not like over 40%, just as I'm making up a number, I don't know what Substack stats are, I'd love to know. But I feel like if your engagement is not high, it's not gonna work either way. So I guess maybe as an answer, I think I would work on engagement, just create value again, make sure you're sending people things they actually open and read, because otherwise they're not gonna pay for it.
Yeah, I can share a little bit from Substack's end as well. We also have a guide about this called, I think it's called Your Guide to Going Paid if you go to substack.com/resources. But absolutely, like there are these two pillars of like reach and engagement, and like at some point you do need to have a big enough list that when you launch, like there is a sizable number of people that are going to read that. But absolutely, your intuition on engagement is right. That even if you have a big list, but like not that many people are reading your emails, it's just sort of like asking people to then open their wallets on top of that is kind of a second step. So definitely focus on your engagement. We've been saying open rates of 50 to 60% is like especially good, and anything higher than that is like really, really good. So yeah, over 40% is roughly like a useful target to think about.
Cool, good learning.
Yeah, figure it all out on your own stuff. Okay, so Abhishek also asks, how frequently does one need to publish if you decide to go paid? Does writing once a week make sense for a paid newsletter, or is that not enough?
Yeah, so that's what I'm doing. I know a lot of people that do daily, and I don't know how they do that. That's so much work. And so I'm finding people are willing to pay for that. And honestly, I think people don't want more email. Like I was thinking about, what if I offer 2 times a week? Will people want that? And from everything I hear, they're not like, oh yeah, more email, that's great. So I think weekly works really well for most people. And I don't think there's like, I will pay more money for 2 a week. But if it's like an amazing daily email, great, people will love that. But I think weekly at the minimum.
I've often wondered if this is like self-selecting audiences or something, of like, if you're getting a daily newsletter, there's some people that like are just total monsters with their inbox and just like love it. And then if you're getting like a weekly newsletter, like you get it because you like getting it once a week or once a month or whatever. So I feel like it also just kind of depends on the audience or something.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also just like the audience and like the value you're getting out of it. Like there's like stock picking newsletters. They're like, every day I want to know what's going on in the market.
Yeah, right. That's a good point. Paula asks, it sounds like most of your promotion happened on social media. Do you have any tips for writers who are trying to avoid social media platforms?
Yeah, I think the answer is always go where your audience is. And so if they happen to be on social media, that's where you got to go. But if there are other places like other newsletters, other podcasts, or I don't know, press, that's the key, is just like figure out who is your audience. And then where do they spend time? Are they like in a few Slack communities you can go pitch? Are they reading TechCrunch? Are they in these few newsletters? But if they happen to be on Twitter, and that's like where they spend a lot of time, then you got to find some way to get in front of them. But I respect that.
Yeah. Susanna has asked a hard-hitting question of why do you think your paid subscribers are 3 to 4% versus 10%?
Yeah, I know, it's weird because there's so many different benchmarks of like conversion. So I think a lot of it depends on like how you got these free subscribers. So like a bunch came from like Hacker News for me, and Hacker News people are known for like not converting. It's always like a low intent group for like landing pages and things like that. So I think it's partly how like intentful are the free folks versus like how much they really want this thing. So I think that's part of it. It might be the price of $15. If I did $10, maybe it would have been a lot higher. So I think that the way that I thought about it is like, what would be like the range of how much I could make if it's like 3% to 10%, and is like even 3% worthwhile, and it was. So yeah.
Just from that question, are you focusing more now on like growing your list, or are you focusing on converting people that are already on your list?
I'd say in general, and I didn't share it this way, but I try to like 90% of my focus is just writing good stuff, because I find that that's the key to all of this. And so I don't spend like a lot of time thinking about growth other than a couple like optimizations here and there. So with basically I'm just focusing on this monthly post being really good. So that's basically all I'm focused on. And I tinkered with like Twitter ads, and I'm trying to get into like some guest posts here and there, but that's as much as I do outside of just focusing on the writing.
I like that. Sophia asks, how do you find experts? Are they all in your network already?
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, I think part of it is putting out interesting content that people value, and they're very open to chatting because now they respect you and are happy to help. So that's part of it, is just like starting with value, and then people are interested in meeting you and sharing and helping. And then once you meet enough interesting people that are in a specific space, they know other people and they create this whole network. So there's a few people that I've met that have been so helpful to connect me to all these other folks. So part of it is start with value, and then just like reach out to people that you think would be valuable and ask them for input, offer them, like, I have a question, I'm trying to write it for a newsletter. Do you want to contribute an answer? Oftentimes people are like, yeah, for sure.
I've definitely found this from my own experience and talking to other writers as well. It's just sort of like when you have great writing and it's out there in public, like it ends up serving as like a portfolio or like its own sort of product, right? And like once you amass this like collection of great writing, then like you have something to offer people. And even if you might not be like necessarily super well known or something like that, like if you have like value, as you're saying, people might be excited to be part of that. So
yeah, especially if they've seen it like on Hacker News or other places, they're like, oh, you wrote that thing, that's cool.
Yeah,
and so yeah.
Luke asks, how many posts of yours are free versus paid?
So I went paid 2 months ago. I did 10 months of free, and so at this point only, I guess 6 are paid, and then the rest are free, and the paid was going to build over time.
And I guess maybe part of the question is also, do you also offer free posts, or are you like completely?
Oh, I see. Yeah. So my approach, and I don't know how other folks do this, but I do. So it's a weekly newsletter, and you get 1 month a month for free, and then every other week is paid. So it's like 3 paid, 1 free, 3 paid, 1 free.
Got it.
And it seems to work, but it, like, once you go paid, it becomes very sad to not share all of this writing you're doing. It becomes like, shit, only like a few hundred people are going to see this now, instead of like 10,000. And so it becomes like a little demoralizing because it's hidden, but on the other hand, you're getting paid. So it's a trade-off.
I kind of like that framing. It's like it's nice to keep writing free posts because it's like a morale boost for yourself as well.
Yeah, people are like, you do all the same amount of work every week, but now like a few hundred people see it versus thousands of people, and it's kind of sad, but yeah, that's the trade-off.
Sophia asks, how many hours do you write a week for the paid newsletter?
So I'm trying to stick to just like a day a week, and it turns into maybe like a day and a half. And something I've been trying to do is get ahead by like 4 newsletters, so I have them basically ready to go, and then I tweak them as they approach. So I've been ramping that up, and that's taken a lot more time just because I'm just like front load a lot of it. And then there's these epic posts that take a lot of time. So initially it was like a day a week, and now maybe it's like a day and a half or 2 days, because I'm trying not to make this a full-time job. I'm trying to do other stuff too. That's probably why I do this thing.
That's cool.
So we'll see how that goes. Yeah.
Hopefully we'll see more creative projects on
Exactly. Yeah, and what's cool, just to add to that, is I find there's a really cool flywheel between writing this newsletter and then the other stuff I do around advising companies and some investing, where they all kind of feed each other with topics and research that I'm doing for the newsletter, informing startups that I'm looking at and talking to. So there's a cool excuse to just spend time learning stuff, to write about it, that helps all these other projects.
That's great. Anita asks, did you offer something new with the paid version, or did you repackage your existing content?
It was exactly the same newsletter, except now 75% of it is paid. So I was trying to keep it like very lightweight and not add more work, just like do what I was doing, but now it's for pay. So it's the same exact newsletter. So it used to be every week for free, and now it became once a month for free, and every other time it's paid. And I hinted at other stuff I'm gonna do. So I'm actually trying to like a little Slack community just for this newsletter for paid subscribers. So I'm trying to find like a couple value adds of why they should subscribe. And so we'll see where that goes, just experimenting.
Maggie asks, you mentioned your first free post should be extra great. How would you define or think about that?
I think it's just the amount of time you spend. I think that's the bottom line. Just like if you spend like a day a week on the regular posts, maybe spend like 5 times that on these kind of epic posts. And I think it's very correlated with the amount of time spent, because most of the writing out in the world, like especially in tech, is just like people put out things just like, you know, superficial, fluffy things that sound really nice, but they spend like, I don't know, a few hours on it. And so just spending more time on something innately is going to make it more valuable. And so I think that's the answer, just spend time on it.
Walter asks the hard-hitting question for us at Substack, and please, of course, answer this honestly. Do you think you could have built an audience as easily starting on Substack versus starting on Medium?
There's no way to build an audience on Medium. It's I don't know what they're doing over there. Like you build followers that follow you on Medium, and then they just I think they launched some kind of newsletter thing, which even that is not like anywhere near what Substack is doing, where you own your audience and you can take them other places if you decide. And so that's why I moved off of Medium. Like they own all of your traffic. There's no way to like send them a message, at least before this thing that they might have announced. And so no, definitely not. I think Medium's had a chance to do what Substack is doing now, and I feel like they missed that chance.
Let's do one more question. This is a good one to end on, from Preeti, who's asking, who says, awesome presentation. And then also, how do you do research for your posts? Do you read a lot? What kind of books and media do you consume?
So I come up with a topic and then I figure out either who are the experts on this thing and go reach out to them, and Google like crazy for answers. So on the point of add something new to the conversation, I always make sure nobody's actually written about this yet in a really good way. So Googling, reaching out to people. So like, for example, the one that had that big spike was, I looked at how did the biggest consumer apps in the world grow their first 1,000 users? How did they find them and how did they get started? So I basically just reached out to early growth people and founders at each of those companies and asked them. And then I also just Googled for existing interviews. So I just watched a bunch of interviews and read a bunch of it, like press clippings of here's the story of these companies. So yeah, Googling, talking to people, watching videos.
Love it. That's all we've got time for today. Thank you so much for coming and talking to us. This was really, really great. Lots of great concrete, actionable feedback. So awesome. Thank you. I'm going to put the link for, we have one more workshop next week with Erin Moon, who's going to talk to us about making friends with your subscribers. So keep an eye on the events page, which I just put in the chat. And we'll be announcing a few more workshops after that. So yes, great seeing everyone here. Thank you, Lenny.
Thank you guys. Thank you, Nadia.
Bye.